Have you ever been watching a Blender tutorial and you see the teacher split his or her screen and so they have multiple editor windows open at the same time and you wonder how are they doing that? That's what today's video is all about. So when you open Blender, this is the default layout. In this case, you have the 3D viewport. In this case, you have what's called the outliner, which shows you the various layers in your project. And in this case, you have what's called the properties panel, which deals with all the properties in a particular object. Sometimes you want to have multiple editor types open in different places in Blender to make sense with your workflow. For example, for myself, I'm creating an exit sign and it's a plastic material, but I would like to have a different window that shows me what the shading editor is doing so that I can see it reflected in this 3D viewport situation. Let me show you what I mean. What you do is you go to the top, you can go to the bottom as well, or over here, and you can drag lower to create a horizontal split, and I'm going to, while I'm still holding the left mouse button, I'm going to click the right mouse button to cause it to go back. You can also drag it in a vertical split, like so. And let's just say that you have that and you just release the left mouse button to get it to stay. And now let's just say that I wanted this one to reflect the shader editor. So what I would do is I would go up here to this button and I would click the shader editor menu option. And now all of a sudden I can see my shader editor, and whatever changes I make here will be reflected over here, and I can get a really good visual of that. That's one way to rearrange the workspace. Another way is you can use, let's say you go to click here, and instead of dragging it over, what you'll get is an arrow. And essentially what it's saying is that it's going to occupy the entire space where you see the white box around. So if I left click, hold that one and move it over here, it's going to occupy this entire space, right? Now let's just say I want it to do the same, but I wanted to make this one occupy this space. Now all of a sudden you've got a very different workspace that might work for you. And now let's just say that you really like this workspace, maybe not as your default, but when you're trying to do a particular thing, maybe this is what you want to see. Well, you can actually save this by clicking on the plus button here. And in this case, I'm going to select duplicate content, and perhaps you could rename it. Maybe I would call this the shading workspace. And there. Now, if I go back to my original layout, it looks the same as my new layout that I created called the shading workspace. Well, how do I get this one back to normal? Well, that's not very difficult. And I can show you how to do this when there's nothing. So for example, if I were to close these different areas, and when I first started using Blender, if I shut down a particular workspace, I thought that I had created some grave mistake and I didn't know how to get it back. Well, essentially it's all about these screen splitting situations. So if I click this one, I can actually duplicate it here. And then just as I did when I was selecting the shading editor in the other one, I can actually change the particular editor type that is reflected here. And in this case, for the default, it would be the outliner there. And now if I were to click back over to the new layout I created, it would still retain the original layout that we had modified and created. And this would retain the default layout that Blender comes with. It's worth noting that when you save this project, the next time you load it, it will have this new layout that you created, but this new layout will not be included in a separate project that you might open in Blender. Thanks for watching this Blender tutorial where we learn how to split the windows in a vertical and a horizontal sense, how you can move things around into the window to your liking, and how you can save that layout. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below, and I'll see you next time.